Hi, welcome to my latest video. Today I'm going to be filming part 7 of my Webasto fuel burning heater installation. In the last video a few weeks ago, which was part 6, I mounted the water pump above the Webasto heater, which is fitted in there behind the bumper on a large aluminium bracket. I 3D printed a mounting for the water pump and kind of plumbed that in with lots of this nice blue silicone hose. I brought the pipes through into the engine bay. If I just zoom in there, you'll be able to see them. Okay, so those silver pipes there. What you're seeing there is the sort of end of a right-angled metal hose joiner. The reason I have used metal elbows is because the hole through into the engine bay is quite tight and is surrounded by sharp metal chassis member pieces of steel. Okay, so I didn't want to risk using a silicone elbow and having it sort of cut through the hose. Okay, so silicone hoses and then metal joiners. Once I'm in the engine bay, I can adopt the sort of traditional silicone elbow metal straight joiner approach, like I've done on all of the other silicone pipe work that we've got. I do have loads and loads of metal elbows here. Okay, so I probably won't use those, but today's challenge will be actually connecting those water pipes up to the heater hoses at the thermostat housing, sort of underneath here. Okay, so this has got to come out. We're going to take the headlights out. I probably don't need to remove the front bumper today, okay, because I've done the work there, and it's now through into the engine bay, which I can get to sort of down here. Okay, so I'm hoping all of today's work will be in the engine bay and I haven't got to take this off. So looking at the things I've got on the table here, I've got a real selection of pipes and clips and bits and bobs here. Okay, so over the past few years, various sort of design iterations, I've purchased pretty much the entire stock of auto silicone hoses. As you can see here, we've got loads and loads of different elbows. This is because I kept changing my mind about how I was going to do it. Do I sort of bring the hoses diagonally across? Do I sort of bring them across and like that, or up and then across? What I ended up doing is going for a sort of 45-degree bend up and then a 90 and a 90 across. And there's a reason for that, and that is that these hoses here are sort of with the car, and the hoses at that end are with the engine, which is moving about. Okay, now even though I've got my special stiff engine mount inserts, yeah, there is still a little bit of movement and vibration of the engine. So the last thing I want to do is take hoses sort of straight across, kind of tight, you know, because they're just going to get pulled around. Okay, so by introducing some elbows, I give it a bit of kind of flexibility and a room to maneuver, room to move. Okay, so what else have we got on the table here? Okay, so we've got all the water hoses and the joiners and things, and loads of clips. So these are nice W4. They look like kind of chrome plated ones, but they're actually, look, it says W4, so that is marine grade stainless steel. I've got loads and loads of other clips in here that I've collected up. I've also got a clip for the exhaust pipe. Okay, so when I fitted the sort of straight through sports exhaust to the Webasto in the last video, basically the exhaust pipe with no silencer, which may end up being too noisy at 6 o'clock in the morning, but we shall see. I couldn't resist not fitting the silencer just to see what it sounds like. And when I went to put the other clip on the sort of Webasto end of the exhaust, I found that it just was too loose. I couldn't tighten it up to actually grip the stainless steel flexi duct for the exhaust. Okay, so the one I had before was a 26 to 28. This is a 24 to 26. Okay, and the diameter of the exhaust is 22. Okay, so I think that's inner diameter, so I'm hoping that the outer diameter is around about sort of 24, 25, and this clip will tighten it down. So I've just put a Jubilee clip on it for now. Next time the front end comes off, I'll swap that clip. I'll also fit some 3D printed mountings that I've designed to sort of hold the hoses a bit more securely, kind of where they go through that bodywork. Okay, the exhaust is coming out down under here. Okay, so it's just visible just there. You can just about see it poking out through one of the sump guard holes. It shouldn't get sort of knocked or anything when I go off-road. May well get a bit of mud in the end of it, but that's easy to clean out. I just had to make sure that that exhaust was sort of well away from anything plastic. Okay, so plastic bumper, plastic wheel arch liners. Bring it out on the metal chassis and then through the metal sump guard so that it can get hot without kind of melting the car. Okay, so that's the exhaust silencer. I will fit that I will cut and fit it into the exhaust if required, but at the moment that's just sort of going along and down like that, like a sort of straight through sports exhaust type thing. Okay, so what else have we got here? Fuel pump. Okay, so fuel, that's the second part of today's work. Okay, so the first part is water connections and then it's fuel. Okay, so the original plan was to use something like this, like a T-piece, probably, I think that's an 8mm, and then we've got a 5mm T-piece here, and actually cut and connect into the fuel line. Okay, so this is just one second-hand one I bought off eBay, just so you can see what it looks like off the car, and it also allows me to play about sort of cutting the pipe, and if it doesn't work I've got the original one to put back on again, or this one to put back on again. So the fuel comes up from the tank here, through the filter, that's the fuel temperature sender, and off there to the high pressure pump, into the common rail there, and into the injectors. Okay, and then spare fuel kind of comes back here, and also there's some sort of bleed off kind of hoses from spare fuel from the injectors. That all comes down here, and I think the high pressure pump also has a sort of excess fuel kind of hose. The three hoses join into one, which then goes back across and back to the tank. And then in here there is a thermostatic valve. When it's cold it gets recirculated the sort of short route, and then when engine warms up and the thermostatic valve closes up, it sends it all the way back to the tank. Okay, so if you want to know more about that, look at my video where I cut open the old fuel filter, and I'll talk more about that. Okay, it can cause issues if that thermostatic valve sticks, or you get a cheap filter which either doesn't have one or has one that doesn't work. So fuel, originally I was going to cut this, stick the T-piece in, and there you go. Plentiful supply of clean diesel post filter. Okay, so downstream from the filter. I probably will do that at some point, but for now I'm going to just opt to keep it completely separate. Okay, so I don't want to interfere with the fuel system of the car. Various reasons for that. I have heard of stories of the high pressure pump sort of drawing air back through the Webasto, and then the air bubbles are sort of going up into the main engine fuel feed. I could put a one-way valve. Then there's sort of cut-off taps and filters. Do you need a secondary filter? It's a lot to think about. Okay, so just for now I'm just going to keep things simple, not cut into the fuel lines and not do anything that could cause issues with the main engine fuel supply. I'm just going to fit this. Okay, so that's a little 1 litre little sort of go-kart fuel tank. I 3D printed this ABS bracket here, and that will be fitted just down in here. Okay, so it's nice and neat, it fits perfectly in that hole there, and it will connect on where this bolt here, where my catch can bracket is fitted on. Okay, so that's what that kind of hole there is for, and that will sit there nicely. 8mm fuel outlet. I've got some 8mm hose. I've bought some of this clear hose. The hose that I fitted originally on the Webasto was this sort of black cotton coated hose, which is probably sort of more fire retardant. and possibly better for sort of physical wear and tear. But I think just to start with, I want to be able to see the fuel actually flowing, and more importantly, bubbles in the fuel. If there's an airlock or something, I just need to see that the fuel's actually kind of going in the right direction. So I bought some of this hose here. We've got 8mm and I think it's 5mm. The pump output and input actually are 4mm, but the 5mm seems a nice tight fit over that because the ends are swaged. And I've got some assorted fuel clips, loads of different types of fuel clips here, just to make sure that's all secure. So out of the tank, down through a filter, back up through the pump. Okay, so the pump, I've decided to use this hole here. Okay, that hole had a big kind of grommety thing in it, like this one here, which the air filter box sort of mounts into. The leg at the bottom of that sits in the rubber grommet. This one had a rubber grommet, unused. Okay, so took the rubber grommet out because it was in a very perished, sad looking state. And what I'm going to do is actually mount the pump. So I've 3D printed this just prototype bracket here, and that pump will be mounted there. That way it's securely on a steel bracket. It's got a bit of space. It's not sort of rattling around loose or going to get damaged. It's held in nicely. I'll make a couple of holes here, and it means then that the fuel line can go down through the filter, back up through the pump, and then into the Webasto. And that way, if there's any air in that fuel line, it'll either go back up to the tank or up through the pump into the Webasto. So there shouldn't be any air bubbles in there. I've heard of issues people have had when they've mounted the pump horizontally, and air just kind of can't rise to the surface and get out of the system. Okay, so I've been told either mount the pump vertically or sort of at a bit of an angle. Okay, so I believe that will work well. I will need to enlarge that hole very slightly. Pit Lane Peanut's out here. Peanut, what are you up to? Right, he's just knocked some hoses off. Right, okay. What are you up to? Yeah, he's trying to help. No, can you leave that alone, please? Right, I don't know where Pit Lane Kitty is. She's inside sleeping. So this will go there, fuel line down through the pump, and sort of design that bracket. Now, move on slightly from that bracket there. I thought, right, if I've got two water hoses kind of coming up in the same vicinity as the pump, I really need to attach those to secure those. So I then made this equivalent. Okay, so that was the first prototype. Just printed that in some blue filament, and then I went for the what I thought was the final design, with this kind of arm sticking out here with a couple of holes in it for cable ties and things to secure the hoses onto that. But then when I offered it up, I thought, I really need this piece a bit further back. Okay, so I've moved it back. So this one here is hopefully the final design. Okay, so that will go here. So there's a pinch bolt there to clamp the pump. I've got some cutouts here so I can get to the bolt heads there. A couple of M5 bolts, and if I just offer that up and let go and then zoom in, you can see there that will sort of cradle the pump vertically, and then we've got two sort of recesses on that arm sticking out which will take elbows. Okay, so these will kind of come up. Let me zoom back out. So those will sort of come up on the metal pipes, okay, like so. As the pipes don't come through completely flat or vertical, they're sort of at 45 degree hoses. And then the vertical bit here, these will be cut down, of course, and then I will tie the two pipes to that bit sticking out, okay, to hold it securely. That's all of that kind of plumbing done, and then I've got to take it across here, and then we do the really kind of scary bit, which is to actually break into the cooling system of the car. When I say break into, I mean actually sort of cut the hose or cut the clip off the hose, pull the hose off the thermostat housing. The coolant will pour out everywhere. There's nothing I can do about that. and I then need to kind of connect in and then refill the coolant, and I only want to do that once, okay, because every time I do it I'm going to lose many litres of coolant. I think it's about 6 or 7 litres of coolant, I think, on this car. I'll have to look it up in the Haynes manual. I've got a big 5 litre bottle of ready mixed coolant, but you know, it is expensive, so I don't want to keep on sort of wasting that. And yeah, I need to be a bit careful of the cats as well, because I think, you know, antifreeze is quite tasty to cats and is also quite poisonous, okay, so whatever I spill on the ground, I've got to get the hose and wash that away. Talking of hoses, garden hoses, I must also flush through, so once the cooling system's ready, you get the hose on it and blast it through to kind of clean out any bits of silicone, any swarf, any limescale, any kind of dirt that's inside the Webasto. There's probably all sorts of kind of sediment and stuff in the Webasto. The water pump's probably got bits and rubbish in it. Flush that all through, make sure it's totally clear and clean, and then connect it up. Okay, now obviously that'll have water in it, not antifreeze, so I need to make sure that when I top up the coolant, the antifreeze is brought up to the correct concentration, okay, because we are still in January here. The weather is mild at the moment, okay, it's not too bad today, it's just cloudy and not windy and not rainy for once, but I'm sure it will go cold again before spring arrives. So yeah, that's it. That's today's task: water and fuel. So what I'm going to do now, take the headlights out, probably just this one actually. I think I'll take this one out just so I can kind of get in there. It just makes access a little bit easier. And airbox out, and yeah, these hoses here, don't need to remove the catch can, but we'll need to remove that hose and that hose there. All of that, I think, we'll just, yeah, get all that off the car, out of the way, okay, just so that I've got a nice clear access. I'm not going to remove the battery, okay, I'll remove the cover but not the actual battery itself unless I really have to. That's a job I don't really want to have to do. It's yeah, there's a lot of wires and cables and everything connected up to that, so if I can kind of work underneath the battery, getting to those heater hoses and thermostat connections, then that saves me a bit of extra work there. Okay, so I've removed the air filter box. I'm not going to remove the headlight just yet, okay, so that only needs removing when I come to do the fuel, okay, which will be in the sort of second half of this video. What I need to do here is just create a bit of space so that I can get in and deal with these hoses here. So the plan is to bring those metal pipes, okay, up on the bracket that the fuel pump will mount on, and then across, so 45 degree, 90 degree, another 90 degree, and then off over here. So what we've got over here is, if I sort of zoom that a little bit, you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. So this whole kind of thing here is the thermostat housing, okay, so you've got that's the thermostat housing. You've got the radiator hoses coming out in there. Inside that bit there is a thermostatic valve that opens and closes and sends water to the radiator only when it's hot. This pipe here goes off to the heaters, okay, the heater matrix in the car. And what I intend to do is use one of these, okay, so what I'm going to do is cut that metal band, okay, so I need to get this wire out of the way. There is a metal band around that, okay, and it's not a Jubilee clip, and it's not even one of those kind of crimpy sort of clips. It just doesn't seem to have an end on it, okay, so there's nothing to kind of get pliers on and cut or undo. So I'm going to have to use a small hacksaw, cut very carefully across the top of that clip so that the clip breaks off, but the hose and the plastic elbow that it's attached to remain. And then I will put this on, so if I zoom out a little bit, so so we'll then have that on that sort of right angle pipe. Okay, and that right angle pipe can't really be rotated. The obvious thing is to turn it round so it points towards the front. There's actually a little kind of groove thing on it that only locates it in that position. I don't really want to sort of file the little sort of tooth off so that it can spin, because then it might leak. Okay, so it has to really be held tight in that position. 180 elbow to bring the heater feed, the heater supply, so the hot water that's coming out, or well, the cold water to start with, but the water that kind of comes out of the engine block, bring it round like that, across here, down here, through the Webasto and back, and then back into the hose that I've disconnected. Okay, so what that will do is it will send Webasto heated water, diesel fired heater water, hot water at whatever temperature it's at, 50 degrees or something, off through the heater matrix in the car. That gets the interior of the car warmed up, and I'll be wiring up the blowers to come on as well, things like that. But the whole idea of doing this is that it sort of warms the inside of the car so you can hop in and the car's all nice and toasty and pre-warmed. It's mostly a comfort thing, but of course warming the engine block as well will help it start easier. It means that the glow plugs and that are not sort of, you know, having to work so hard to get that engine fired up. So the heater return pipe is out of sight. Okay, so that sort of comes in, goes along the back and in the other end of the engine block. It might go through the EGR. There's a pipe along the back and there's a pipe through the EGR. I've got a feeling it might be possibly the heater return that goes through the EGR. Not sure, but either way they both end up at the other end of the engine with the water pump pumped through the engine block. So any spare heat from the cabin will then warm the engine block and out, and the cycle repeats. Okay, that's the plan. Okay, that's the idea, that's the way it works. So I need to get this fitted, and what I'm going to do, I think, is work from here up. Okay, so I do that bit sort of last, because that's the drastic bit. Okay, that's the actual sort of cutting into the cooling system where all that coolant's going to pour out and make a mess and everything else. So try and do that last, otherwise it's just going to be soaking wet here, and I'll sort of build up to that point, right? Okay, so the next thing to do is to enlarge this hole. This hole here is about 22 millimeters, I think. I bought one of these nice step drill things, and it's actually got measurements on it, which is nice. Okay, so let's have a little look. Okay, so that slots in there, and that is 24. Okay, so 24, but it needs to be 26 for that sort of bottom bit on the pump. Okay, so what I want is for that bit, that sort of step bit, if I just get that off the pump, I'll tell you what, look at another pump, it's easier. Okay, so not that one, because that's a cheap Chinese one. This one, so it's actually got Webasto written on it, so you know it's genuine. This is a brand new, supposedly genuine Webasto pump. It's MTM, but it's very expensive. Had to get that imported from Germany. And if you look at it, I mean, it's sort of similar. Diameter and hose connection diameter should be exactly the same. Worst case, if that doesn't work for whatever reason, I've got these two. Okay, so these are both genuine Webastos. That one's really old and rusty, taken off a Discovery. What's it? Oh, this, yeah, Discovery 4. I think they're both of Discovery 4s. So this should also, you see, it's a bit of a tight fit. The diameter of that bit there is 26 millimeters. Okay, so I need to go one step on the step drill, just carefully enlarge that, and I need to be really careful because just below it is a wiring loom. Okay, so if that drill kind of goes down too far, it's going to cut into the wires. Okay, so enlarge that slightly, and I also need to drill carefully a couple of holes here. So once the pump and everything's in there, I'll sort of mark this and drill that with probably a 5mm drill or 5.5. So I've got I've got some M5 bolts to pick up those two holes there that you can see. Okay, here. Stick a couple of bolts down, short M5 bolts, like 20mm long, or maybe even 16mm long. A couple of nylock nuts on the other side, and that is then the pump, the fuel pump, mounted. Now you're probably thinking, I thought you were doing water, not fuel first. Well, I need that thing in place, that mounting bracket, because it's got the arm on it. Okay, so that is the arm that it will support the 45-degree elbows, which are the first elbows that I need to fit. Okay, so I'm going to get those in place, cut these down accordingly, and get those kind of, sort of like, let's see how we can do this. I'm trying to do it with one hand here. Sort of like so. Okay, so you've got those little cutouts there. So there'll be two, one each side. And that kind of holds them nice and firm. And then they can then be extended off across. Right, I'm going to get the drill out and get drilling. Okay, so I've enlarged this hole here, so that is now 26mm. I've deburred it with a round file, and that's nice and smooth now. That steel actually is pretty thick, very thick there. Feels like sort of like about 2mm thick, but I'm sure it's probably not that. It's probably 1mm steel, but it's certainly a chunky, secure bracket to mount the fuel pump on. So now that I know that the fuel pump will fit down through that hole, I need to mark these two holes carefully and then somehow drill them. Probably need to get this other fuel line out of the way. It's going to be a little bit difficult getting the drill in there, but I'm sure I can do it. Drill those. I'll start off with probably a 3mm drill, enlarge it then up to 5.5, and then put a couple of M5 bolts in there, and that's that bracket then fitted, ready to secure the hoses. Okay, right, there it is. There it is. A really solid fuel pump. I need to put a pinch bolt in there just to hold it, but I don't even know if that's really necessary. It's not going to go anywhere. That is solid. Right, amazing. That's in there. I didn't actually drop any tools or nuts or washers into the bottom of the engine bay. First time for everything. Right, hoses now. So I need to try and fit this kind of, so there'll be one that side and one, the lower one will come up that side. Okay, so what I need to do is work out how much I need to cut off these. So these need to be pulled forward a little bit because they're a little bit kind of springing back on the other hoses on the other side. So I'll try and do the one underneath first. I think it'll be easier getting to that without the upper hose fitted. Okay, so that'll be I wonder if I don't think I really need to cut anything off that one. I want an overlap of sort of about kind of 2 inches or so. This one here, yeah, that could do probably an inch cut off there. That'll be kind of like so. Okay, 2 hoses like that, and then I can put a cable tie right round. I've got holes through here. Okay, so I'll just do an oval cable tie round the whole lot. So this is a 90 degree, so that will kind of sit sort of like so. I mean, everything needs cutting down. These hoses have a very long sort of arm at each side. Okay, so that will be there, and then there'll be another right angle, and then the hoses then go across there. So before I make those bends and cut these hoses down here, I will see where these hoses are going to come out. I mean, this one's here, the other one will be probably around here, and the issue that I've got is I've got to stay well away from all this gubbins here, which is the gear selector linkages. So the idea there is to use metal joiners, okay, which have a 45 degree bend in, and that forms a rigid sort of arch to kind of get things up out of the way. Okay, if I just use rubber hose like this across here, it risks sort of sagging into the things here. Now I'll put some supports and things like that in as well, but I think doing it like this will offer mechanical protection, but also it reduces the number of Jubilee clips, because if I use a little joiner and then another hose, a bit of straight hose or another bend, and then another Jubilee clip and another joiner and another Jubilee clip onto those hoses, it's just kind of too many clips really, and every clip is a weak point, if you see what I mean. So everywhere where there's a joint, it's where coolant could leak out from. Okay, so I want to try and minimize the number of Jubilee clips. I think I did count them up. I think I'm already using about 14 or 15 Jubilee clips. Okay, now they'll all be nice stainless clips and it's nice silicone hoses. There shouldn't be any leaks at all, but in an ideal world I'd buy, you know, one hose in the right shape. Okay, so yeah, couldn't find one of those, so I've had to just construct it out of joiners, short joiners, elbow joiners. I've got all sorts of things here, so I've got some long joiners. Now these ones were the ones I was going to use originally across here, okay, but it's just too close to the gear linkage. Okay, so I need to bring it up out of the way. And if you look at that thermostat hose there, it's at an angle, it's not horizontal. Okay, so if I use these, it would be sort of sticking up in the air. It's just not really going to work. Okay, quick update. Things are looking good. We've got the fuel pump on the bracket here, and then I've connected up these hoses here. I needed to trim a small amount off the frontmost arm of the lower hose, and then the upper one was about 7 centimeters off. Okay, so those are in there with the nice stainless Jubilee clips and are now cable tied to that arm. This is exactly how I wanted it to be, nice and solid. The metal pipes are coming through, they're not sort of rubbing against anything or rattling about, they're held nice and firm. I will be putting another kind of pipe clamp thing down in here next time the front end comes off, but for now it's not actually really needed. I mean, that is nicely held. So what I need to do now is extend these up and across with some 90 degree elbows. These will need trimming down quite a bit actually, because I need to make quite a tight turn and then a short extender across, and then that way, and there'll be sort of one that goes there and one that goes there. Okay, so sort of 2 pipes that go across there to pick up with the heater hoses. Before I do these bends going across, I need to cut these down, okay, so they need cutting down, and I want to mount some little temperature sender units, okay. So one of the things that I want is, when I build the electronics, there's going to be a two-part control box, okay, so there's going to be a sort of junction box that kind of goes up there with all the wires kind of coming down to everything, and then there's going to be one cable through the bulkhead to a sort of digital display, okay, so it's going to have gauges, temperature gauges, voltage gauges, LED lights and all sorts of other things, okay. And I thought, wouldn't it be brilliant if I could see the temperature of the water going in and out of the Webasto, because then I can get an idea of how much it's heating that water, okay. As well as that, I will probably have ambient temperature and external temperature, okay. So 4 temperature gauges, so the air outside the car, the air inside the car, the water going in, the water coming out, okay. I know some of you are thinking, really? that's a lot of displays and a lot of wiring and a lot of sensors and things like that, okay, but I just think it will look really, really amazing, okay. So we'll have all this kind of readouts and data and everything like that, okay. If you're going to do it, let's do it properly. Be building the electronics probably in the next video, okay, but for now I need to fit these sensors, okay. So these are water temperature sensors that these came with some gauges that I've got, so let me show you the gauges now, just so you can see the sort of thing that I'm talking about. Okay, so somewhere in here, all the junk in the back of the car. Okay, so we are going to use a control box like this. It's just a metal sort of powder coated kind of project box, okay, and that's just in a cellophane wrapper at the moment, keep it scratch free. And the gauges, let's have a look now. What is this one? Is that volt? Okay, so we've got a voltmeter there, because voltage is important as well, okay. So it's not the voltage of the main battery, it's the voltage of the auxiliary battery. I put these gauges into little plastic bags just to stop the faces getting scratched up at all. So let's just open one of these up and have a quick look. Right, there we go. You can't really see that because it's really shiny, but there, yeah, you can just about see it there, okay. So it is a it actually says degrees C and volt, but it is a temperature. It says water temp, okay, water temp, all right, and that will give the temperature in Celsius, in centigrade, going in, and there's another one for coming out, okay. So that way we can see effectively what temperature the engine block is, because that will be the water that's going to the Webasto, okay. So the water that comes out of the thermostat housing to the Webasto, so that'll be the engine temperature, and then that will get elevated up by the heating power of the Webasto diesel fired heater, and then we'll know the water temperature of the water going to the heater matrix, and in turn that will then warm the inside of the car, and that will have another readout, okay. So there's sort of 4 different temperatures there, okay. So it's important to know how much the Webasto is raising that temperature of the water, okay. It's also important to know the engine block temperature, and it's important to know the outside temperature, because that sort of really drives everything else, okay. Inside the car isn't really necessary. I mean, I'll be sort of sitting in it at some point, I can feel how warm it is in the car, but you know, it's nice to know. Obviously once I start the car, I get the temperature readout on the dashboard, which is the outside temperature, which I think is a sensor under the wing mirror, usually under the wing mirror, so I will know the outside temperature then. But of course all of the Webasto thing runs before the engine starts up, before the key is even inserted. I know that I will be in the house, not sat in the car, so you might be thinking it's completely pointless having a digital display talking to itself in the car when I'm in my dressing gown in the house. Okay, yes, yeah, you know, you have a point there. It's a bit pointless having a digital readout. I mean, maybe one day I can sort of make some sort of wireless one, okay, so that it sort of sends all the data to an app on the phone or something like that. Okay, now I do actually have some Bluetooth temperature sensors that I use on my 3D printers just to get the temperature inside the 3D print enclosures, which then beam to my phone and tell me if there's too hot or too cold. And you know, on a hot summer's day it gets very, very warm in the summer house where the printers are running, and I do need to keep an eye on that. But likewise in winter, I don't want things getting too cold, because then filament starts to warp and that sort of thing. So I might be able to do something with those maybe, and set up some kind of Bluetooth link. This is all in the future, okay, so this is all sort of advanced stuff for other videos, okay, in the future. Just want to get this running, and when I get it running I need to know if it's actually working and doing anything really. So to start with, I will have the display in the car. I think realistically the first couple of times I use the Webasto, I will probably come out and sit in the car and keep an eye on things. Okay, so long story short, I'm going to need to put these in the water hoses. Okay, so somewhere where there was going to be an aluminium hose joiner, so instead of one of these things, okay, I need to pop this in. Okay, and that's a 20mm. I don't think they did a 19. They might have done a 19, but I went 20, even though these are 19 hoses. I just kind of wanted it extra tight really on these. I'm just a bit worried that that sensor pokes quite far into the inside of the thing. If I hold it like that, you better see sort of through there, and there is a possibility that will restrict the flow of the water. I think it'll probably be alright. I don't know how quickly the water moves through these hoses really. The water pump from the Webasto will be running. I've seen how quickly that pumps the water on the prototype, but that was just a prototype, and of course with this one it's got to go all around the heater and engine block and everything, so it's going to be moving, I would have thought, a bit slower. So it should hopefully be okay. But I need to put these in, because if I don't put these in now, then I've then got to cut the hoses apart and all the coolant's going to come out again. Then I've got to put them in and then refill the coolant. I don't want to waste too much coolant, you see, so get these in now. What I've done is I've put an eyelet underneath with an M10 stainless washer. The problem with these is they have a connection on top, but the thinking is that the body of the sensor is sort of grounded somehow. But if that's floating in the middle of a plastic rubber hose, silicone hose, then there's no ground, you see. So I need an earth connection on the other side of the sensor, the bit that's kind of screwed in, and then the bit on the top there will have another crimpy eyelet thing which goes off to the gauge. Well, both wires will probably go to the gauge. Okay, so I think there's two wires coming out the back of the gauge. Okay, so that is there, but I won't be able to insert that thing later. Okay, so if I take the sensor out later, that is going to make all the coolant come out. So I need to get it in there. I think really probably need to tighten these down now against that spring washer. Do that now, otherwise I'm going to be wrestling with a sort of thing in the middle of a hose, trying to kind of hold it while I tighten the big nut on that. So I've got to get it in there and get it watertight. I don't know if I need any sort of sealant, PTFE tape. It is a tapered thread, so I'm kind of hoping when I tighten it up it'll seal itself. We shall see. Right, I'm going to get the hose cut. I need to cut this down. I need to get these in. Okay, so we've got the wiring for the fuel pump, and then there'll be more wiring. The idea really is that all the various cables and things sort of go into one flexi duct thing which goes off to the box which will be up there. Look at that. That is amazing. So we've got two water temperature sensors there in the top of those hoses. That's all nice and solid. And now what I need to do is try and get these to go across and sort of like that. I was going to just sort of route these kind of like two like that, but then I suddenly thought, oh, which is the input and which is the output? And it does matter, because the pump is designed to run in one direction. Okay, so this one here goes in and across the top through the pump, through the Webasto, and then back. Okay, so that is the input, and that needs to be fed from the thermostat housing. Okay, so the hose that kind of comes around, the one that's nearest the camera here, goes to there, and then this one will go to the factory heater hose that goes off to the heater. So that one there needs to be a bit sort of longer. Okay, and this one here a bit shorter. I'm not sure at the moment if I'm going to take this one sort of above or below, but I do need to keep well away from this gear linkage thing here. So originally I was going to use a couple of these kind of 45 degree bends like that, but I just think it's just too low, you see. It needs to be kind of probably up here. Now I could bend that up a bit, but I think it's probably better to use a couple of straight joiners. I've got different lengths. I've got short, medium and long. I think longs really are too long, but if I put that kind of like so, that's bringing it up now to the right sort of kind of this kind of level here. Okay, and it still clears the gear linkage as well. Okay, so that is how I'm going to do it, with straights, not 45s. And it just means the hoses will come sort of up and then down a bit, but that's fine. There's plenty of room here. Okay, so the air box here sort of has a big cutout. This area here is open, you know, for a void. Basically there's a big space there. You can see it there on the side of the airbox, a big cutout. Okay, now I need to be a little bit careful because the airbox feed pipe needs to come out, but that's sort of kind of here, not here. Okay, so stuff in this area is okay. All right, there's plenty of room. I will need to fabricate some kind of support thing somehow. Haven't thought about that yet. Worry about that once everything's plumbed in. Pit lane Kitty's out here. She's, I don't know, sitting and guarding her territory. She's probably not going to be helping me with this, but yeah, you never know. Maybe one day she will help. Right, let's get more hose cut. Right, quick update, because it's starting to get dark out here now. I need to get packed away and then I'll carry on tomorrow. So this is what it's looking like. Okay, I'm not totally happy with these joiners. Okay, so these are the very long ones. The shorter ones here are just not long enough. Okay, even with those hoses there not cut down, they just weren't long enough. And those are twice as long, they're too long. So these are 150 millimeter and those are 300. What I really need is some 200s. I was also going to use the 45 degree, but that is just sending things down there at too steep an angle. Okay, so it's just not going to work with those either. What I may end up doing is just not using these long joiners and just use some straight hose. Okay, so I've got quite a lot of straight hose. This is nice and flexible, and yeah, just sort of route some hose down there, then it can kind of snake around as required. It does mean more joints, more Jubilee clips, but yeah, it can't really be helped really, unless I can find some 200mm joiners, and I will have to find those in a hurry because I really want to get this plumbed in tomorrow, and I want to do it once, not twice or three times. Okay, so whatever I do tomorrow, I've got to decide how I'm going to be doing it. Okay, so this is all sort of done. I'm fairly happy with this here. I've actually used some brass, well, one brass barbed sort of joiner. It's like one of these things. It's just a very short hose joiner with sort of barbs on it, which is fine. I'll Jubilee clip that together. It's actually exactly the same as what I've used in some of the other kind of pipe work over there. There's just not enough room for one of these joiners. Now I think I can get shorter ones of these. This is 100mm. I think they do 50 or 60. So yeah, if I can get one of those, I can pop it in there, but it's fine. That's joined. That underneath there has a one of these basically, and that's fine. That actually makes a sort of a nice kind of slot to sort of rest that other hose in. So it's taking shape. I just need to kind of do this bit here really, which is just causing me a bit of head scratching really, just trying to work out how to do that. I need to make sure that I don't block the route of the catch can hose that kind of comes across here. I've also got this balancing pipe here, which is quite delicate, and that needs to be protected. So yeah, needs a little bit more thought, but I'm pleased with this arrangement. I like that. Okay, so we've got our temperature sensors down in there. Try and get these. Let's get these out of here. And, oh dearie. Yeah, you see that comes out, and then yeah, we've got our kind of twin sensors there with yeah, the fuel pump down there. So tomorrow we'll be finishing off the coolant routing, and then it's fuel. And then in part 8 I will be onto the electronics. Okay, here we are the next day. It's lovely sunshine out here, and I've been having a bit of a think about this. The previous setup that I had yesterday with these long pipes, I just wasn't happy with that really. These are just too long and it just didn't look right really. I know that originally I said I need to sort of have a bit of a kind of an angle in the hose to absorb any sort of engine vibrations. You can't just go sort of straight across tight in a straight line, because that's going to be sort of pulling on those hoses. But I looked at the pictures I took yesterday, I looked at the footage that I filmed, and I just wasn't happy with the way it looked really. It just didn't look right. These pipes kind of crossing over each other. And also I thought about this. The heater hose is not connected to the engine, okay, so that's actually really connected to the bulkhead. Okay, so it comes through the bulkhead and up, doesn't go anywhere near sort of moving engine. Okay, so that can go straight across. That's connected to the car, same as this. The only one that really will have any kind of vibration on it is the U-bend, okay, the 180 degree hose, and really the shape of that really will absorb any slight movement in the engine. Okay, by the time it gets to the end here that I want to connect up, okay, so the hose is in there at the moment. You can just about see it's very bright sun today, so hopefully the camera exposure is okay. So that blue hose, there's another end which you can just about see, just in let's try and poke my finger there, just poking out from under the battery. By the time it gets to that end, there's not going to be any movement in it, and if there is any, the shape of the U-bend has enough flex in it to cope with that. Okay, so what I've decided to do is do away with all those joiner things. I wasn't happy with these long silver ones, aluminium joiners, and I also wasn't happy with this little short thing. That's just asking for trouble. That's going to pull apart and then I'm going to have coolant leaking everywhere. So I've got loads of straight, okay, straight 19mm. I've got this piece, which is about 35 centimeters long, and I've got a meter of it as well. So I've got plenty of this. This is very flexible, okay. So what I'm going to do is actually sort of stack these elbows effectively one on top of the other like so, and this one here will go off down to the other end of that 180 degree, and this one here will go across there with a bit of straight, okay. So that reduces the number of Jubilee clips, okay, because we've not got sort of unnecessary elbows in there, and really we're going to have sort of Jubilee clip and another one at the other end, really, rather than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's just less points of failure, okay. So I'm going to cut some of this straight hose. I'm going to use my short 100mm joiners there, which have got sort of swaged ends, so they're not going to pull apart like the brass ones might do. And I'm going to get that ready to connect in. Okay, that U-bend one, yeah, I'll probably connect into one end of it and just kind of leave it in there. It's not doing any harm. But the actual swapping over of this pipe on the thermostat housing, I'll do that tomorrow evening. So I'm going to get that done, then I'm going to look at the fuel system, okay. And there's our fuel pump sitting down there ready. These temperature sensors, I've turned those around because when I went to put the airbox in yesterday, it was hitting here, okay, on that one, so I've just turned those round, but they are going to stay there. And yeah, the fuel pump, fuel pump's there, fuel tank here, and I'm going to cut the fuel hose and run that with the filter up into the pump and then off to the Webasto. Okay, so quick update. Right, the water hoses are pretty much in. I just need to cut the actual coolant hose clip and swap those over. Okay, so this is what I've ended up with. It has a lot less joints and a lot less Jubilee clips than the previous kind of snaky hose thing that I had before. Okay, so this one here is this is the feed. Okay, so that's a bit higher. I've taken that one above, and I'll be making some sort of clippy thing to kind of keep these apart here, okay, just so the Jubilee clips don't kind of cut into the hoses. That one is deliberately taken as the highest one to get it well away from the gear linkage mechanisms down there. That is connected to the end of the U-bend, and that end is there, okay, ready to be connected to the thermostat housing. And then this one, this is the return from the Webasto, which is going to be sort of like so onto that hose that's currently connected to there. Okay, so literally cut that clip, pull off the hose, put the 180 end on, and then a joiner to kind of take that one back into the hose that's just been removed. That will be probably tomorrow evening, okay, and that's sort of ready to go. What I may try to do is, next time I take the bumper off the car, is actually sort of swap the hoses. At the moment, the one from the water pump is the upper one. I might be able to take that down as the lower one. Don't know if there's enough room for that, and that would mean then that these don't need to cross over, okay, because it was this crossover really that was causing me a bit of a headache really. I was just sort of looking at that thinking, I don't really like it crossing over, be it with right angled corners or like this with the sort of flexible straight hoses. It doesn't look great, okay. I'd much rather these kind of came up and like that rather than crossing over, but for now I'm not removing the front end. I just have to work with what I've created further down here. If I can swap the hoses over lower down, then these don't need a crossover here, okay. But these pieces here are very similar lengths, okay, so they are basically identical length really, of about probably 25 centimeters each, and it would be really easy in the future just to kind of swap those. Obviously the coolant's going to pour out again and refill that, but maybe that's a job for the summer. I need to take the front end off at some point to spray the grill and do various other things. Okay, so this panel here I'm having issues with. There's chunks of plastic, every single bolt here has got a crack, so I'm going to be doing some kind of reinforcement or kind of quick release body pins or something like that there. So the front end will be coming off for that probably in a couple of months time, so I will worry about uncrossing these hoses then. But for now, in the winter, I need to get this done. I mean, it's sunny and nice out here now, it's very warm out here now, but it was a harsh frost this morning. Okay, so had I needed to get in the car and go anywhere this morning, I could have really have done with the Webasto. Okay, so here that's a little bit close to there, but I can clip these hoses to sort of keep them away from anything that might damage them. Okay, it just needs a cable tie around them there. Okay, so that's enough for coolant hoses for today. I'm now going to switch to working on the fuel delivery to the Webasto. Okay, so we've got the fuel pump, and I need to bolt in the tank and cut some fuel line to connect the fuel filter, so that'll be sitting about here underneath the tank, down, up through the pump and in. Okay, so there's going to be 3 lengths of hose there. There is also, actually it might be 4 lengths of hoses, because I also need a reducer somewhere. Okay, because the pump output is 8mm and this is it's actually 4mm here, but it'll take a 5mm hose with a clip. Okay, so I couldn't get any 4mm hose, I only get 5mm. So it is a good fit onto the end. It fits firmly onto the ends of the pump. Okay, so we're going to have some 5mm. These outputs here on the pump are the same size as the output on the Webasto, so the 5mm will go on that as well. I think this hose here actually is 5mm, I think, and that's fitting on absolutely fine. So 1, 2, reducer, 3, filter, 4. Okay, so it's 4 lengths of hose, 2 8mm pieces and 2 5mm pieces. Right, I'm going to get all the bits and bobs out now for the fuel side, and I will carry on filming in a moment when I'm offering those up. Okay, so let's just have a look at the fuel side of things. So this is the little tank there with a 3D printed bracket. It's got an 8mm outlet on the bottom, so that is going to mount somewhere like that. And then we're going to have a short piece of hose, so we've got some 8mm hose here through this nice glass filter. It's got an in and out on it, so that will sit sort of like so. Then we're going to have an 8 to 5mm reducer. I've actually bought an 8 to 4 as well, because I thought the Webasto pump connections and the actual fuel input on the Webasto was 4mm. I'm sure that's what Google said, but looking at this, that's way too small. Okay, so that is smaller than the pump output. If I just pull that thing off there, let's just zoom in. You can see there's the pump output, and that is smaller. Okay, so that's a smaller hole on it. Okay, so I think it is a 5mm, which is good because I've got 5mm bore nylon reinforced hose there. So we take it down to 5, down through the pump, and then another 4th piece to go into the Webasto. Okay, so there's the fuel tank bolted in, and we've got the fuel line going down through the filter and up underneath the pump, and that's been connected on at the bottom. I now need to connect up some more 5mm hose from the top of the pump and then take that off towards the Webasto, and I'll remove the headlight. Hopefully I can get down to the back of the Webasto to connect that hose. Okay, so that's the fuel system now connected up. I've decided to reuse this braided hose from the pump to the Webasto. I was hoping to be able to reach down and disconnect at the Webasto end, but it's just very, very difficult to get to, and I've also clipped the hose to the bodywork, so I will have to remove the front end at some point to kind of get to that. For now, just to make the fuel system sealed up and sort of dust proof, I've connected up that pipe. There was a bolt in the end of the pipe sealing it, so no dirt has got into that, and I've cut that down, connected that into the pump, and just put a cable tie here. We can see here we've got the tank in with the filter, and that goes down up through the pump and then off to the Webasto. So that is the fuel system now completely done and ready, and it's kind of sealed all the way really to this hole under the cap. Okay, so that is waiting there for some diesel to be poured in. The coolant system needs to be connected up. I'll try and do that tomorrow night, and yeah, and then it's on to the electronics. Get this thing fired up and get some warmth going. I've got the garden hose out, and I've connected it up to the ends of one of the pipes, and I'm going to flush the system through, flush water through and out of this just temporary long piece here to get rid of any dirt, bugs, limescale, dust, swarf, bits of plastic, bits of metal, anything else that's crawled into the hoses and the Webasto while they've been disconnected. Okay, it's very important that there's nothing inside the new plumbing that's going to then sort of get washed downstream into the heater circuit or into the engine. So I'll turn on the hose, flush this through. I probably ought to do it in both directions just to make sure it's totally clean, and then the big scary moment, I'm going to actually cut into the heater circuit of the car and plumb this in. Okay, that is the big thing. It's a big milestone. It's the first time it's the first point at which I will be actually sort of connecting into the car, the existing car systems. So far I've just been bolting things on. Okay, so it's a step that has to happen, and today's the day. Right, let's get that hose on, get some water flowing through. Okay, we have some water. So this is the first time that water has been through the Webasto in about 4 years. It was when I heated up that bucket of water. It was the last time it had water going through it. Now what I'm looking for, any leaks or anything like that. We've got water here, but there's nothing underneath the Webasto, which is important. Right. I can hear some air going through. Oh, hang on. What's going on here? It's probably just air in the garden hose, I hope. It's sort of coming and going a bit, but yeah, it might be just air in the Webasto itself that's coming out. I don't know. I'm going to up the pressure a little bit, and then I will switch this round so that the water's going the other way through. Okay, so that is going the other way through now. Got water coming out of that end. It's a little bit oily, but that might have been oil that was already on the ground. The important thing is that water can flow quite easily through the system. Even though the pump is not being powered up at the moment, the water is still able to flow through it, and that's something that's really important, because in the summer, or well, not so much in the summer, you have air conditioning, cooling in the summer, but spring and autumn, when I'm not running the Webasto but I do want warm air out of the heater, water has to be able to pass through the pump with it not actually powered up and spinning. Okay, so that is flowing quite easily. It's probably turning the pump without sort of causing too much of a problem. Right, I'm going to turn this water off now because that is leaking a bit there from the garden hose, not from the blue hose, and it's just making a little bit of a flood here. Pit Lane Peanuts over there, he's wondering what is going on. Right, so I've tried cutting this with a hacksaw, but it's going to be difficult. I think it's a stainless steel or chrome steel. It's very slippery. You're getting the saw to kind of bite in, and there's not a lot of room there to actually kind of saw through. So I'm going to attempt my Dremel tool here with a little cutting disc on the end and just see if I can very carefully cut through that clip. I don't really want to have to cut the hose. One option would be to just cut the hose just behind the clip and then pull off the clip and the remains. But if I ever have to put this back, I need that hose as it is now, really. Otherwise it's going to be a bit short and it's going to be difficult kind of pulling it to reattach it. Okay, so the clip is off. There it is. Cut through that very, very carefully with the Dremel. The disc did actually break in the end, so I had to put a new one on. Very carefully cut through that. That was the easy bit. Getting this hose off was more difficult, and I'm literally just going to pull that off. It was really tightly on here. I had to kind of prise it off with a big flat blade screwdriver. I'm going to actually pull that off. Oh God, it's really difficult to get that off, but it is moving. There we go. There we go, and there's the coolant. Okay, try and zoom that a bit. Okay, that's the coolant coming out. It looks quite rusty. Yeah, it probably is a bit of rust in it actually. I mean, it's red coloured OAT coolant. I was expecting more than that to come out, so it's probably just drained the cylinder head, and yeah, it may well just slowly dribble out. I need to get this hose here back in now and on there. Try and swap this over before too much coolant comes out. Try and clean up that end of the thermostat housing elbow. Okay. Right. Okay. Let me get these hoses in and get them connected, and then I'll open the cap and yeah, top up the coolant. By leaving the cap on, it sort of almost creates a little bit of a sort of vacuum and stops too much coolant coming out. Okay. I believe if I open the cap now, more would pour out. So I'm going to get that swapped over. I need to flush out any coolant that's dribbled out before the cats start trying to lick it up. There's yeah, you can just about see under there a red colour in the puddle under the car. Okay, so I need to dilute that down and flush it away into the drain in the corner. Okay, right, quick update. Really difficult getting this on to the end of the elbow. I've ended up actually removing that from the thermostat housing. It was very easy to remove. You just pull out this clip, pull that clip off with pliers, and then this literally just walks off. You can see the end of the pipe that it comes off here, that one there. Okay, there's no sort of swaged end on that, so I can't connect the hose straight onto that. I do need to use this elbow, and inside there is a little sort of ridge bit, which means that it can only go on that way. You can't have it like that, unfortunately. So I've taken that off. It is actually a little bit big. I'm using 19mm hose because all of the other connections are 19 or about 20mm probably, so I'll go 1mm lower for a tight fit. This is, I would say, more like sort of 20, 21. It will go in there. It's a bit of a tight fit. I just need to get that in and get a Jubilee clip on it, and then it should stay put on these barbs here. Okay, I just need to be careful where I've been levering the other hose off. It's kind of scraped these a little bit. I do need them to lock and seal correctly. Right, I'm gonna get this into the end of that. It's a bit easier now that it's off the car, and then get that hose in, put this back onto the thermostat housing, and get everything clipped securely together. Okay, the 180-degree hose is in. I've reattached the elbow to the thermostat housing and very carefully refitted the clip. I was a little bit nervous that bit. If I knew if I dropped that clip, yeah, I mean, that's it. It's got to be clipped in, otherwise that will pop off when the engine gets hot. And yeah, just very carefully with pliers put that clip back on. I thought if I drop that and I lose it, then that's going to be a real tricky one to sort out. Okay, but that is on. What's more, this hose here, which was going to be sort of up here somewhere, or up here, is actually quite floppy and can actually sort of hang down somewhere. I need to work out where. It's a bit near this gear linkage here, so I need to probably bring that round here. Try and keep everything up out of the way. Right, I'm going to keep going with the Jubilee clips, getting this clip together. The joiner pipes here are a little bit, it's a little bit of a loose fit in that, but the hose actually gets smaller as it goes back. Okay, so it's just been stretched over that thermostat kind of elbow thing. So here, further back, it's a tight fit. Okay, so I'll probably use a slightly longer one and stick that kind of right in, and then get a Jubilee clip sort of a bit further back on it. So that's definitely sealed in. Okay, right, that is in. What a job. That was hard work getting all those hoses connected up. It's clearing the gear linkage. I need to sort of cable tie this a bit out of the way, just so that it doesn't rub against here. That also probably needs securing a bit, the end of the old hose, with a couple of cable ties around over there. But that is in. So we've got hot water, well, no, cold water kind of coming out of the engine, going round off to the Webasto, getting heated and coming back and going off down the factory hose to the heater. What I need to do now is tidy away a little bit, refill the coolant with nice new fresh antifreeze, and start the car. Put everything back, start it up, and let things warm up and pressurize a bit. I mean, this is a 21 psi cap, so it's not that high, but there will be a bit of pressure. I just need to make sure that nothing's leaking. Okay, so this is back together now. The new hoses are a bit hidden away underneath this, but I need the air filter refitted in order to start the engine. I've put in half a big 5-litre bottle of coolant, maybe not quite half because of this sort of slopey shape of the bottle there. Actually, there is on the back, there is, okay, so there we go, 3 litres pretty much left, so 2 litres gone in, and that has made a lot of gurgly noises, but that level is now sitting at max on the side of the coolant tank. I'm expecting a lot more air to come out because I just don't think those Webasto hoses will have coolant in them. There'll be some water sort of down the bottom in the Webasto from earlier, but where I was connecting everything up, any coolant in those would have come out. So there'll be a big air bubble kind of gurgling through. The coolant level will drop when that eventually reaches the tank, and then I'll have to top it up. Might even see the low coolant warning on the dashboard. So I'm going to start it up now and see what happens. This is a bit of a big milestone. Now the Webasto is actually in series with the cabin heater. Water's going to be going through it. I just need to start this up and keep a very close eye out for any leaks. Right, let's do this. I've been waiting for this moment for many years, even though the Webasto's not actually firing up at the moment. This is, I think, more scary. Right, okay. Didn't see any warnings coming up on the dashboard. That think has gone down a bit. Yeah. That's gone down. Now I'll be able to feel on the new hoses if they're getting warm from the heat of the engine. Right. Need to top that up a bit. Only a little bit though. Keep on bringing it back to maximum. As that air comes out, it will the level will drop. Right. Now it's going to take a while to actually get warmed up, so I think the best thing is probably to go for a drive. I'll let it idle for a bit and then I'll take it out carefully around the block, not too far from home in case suddenly have a massive coolant leak. Don't want to be too far away, so I'll let it warm up like this and then I'll go out shortly. Okay, so I've just been round the block and I'm getting a low coolant error on the dashboard. However, the vents are blowing nice warm air. Okay, so that proves that the hot water is getting up to the heater matrix. Okay, I know there's a PTC electric heater. Okay, but that doesn't warm it that much. That's nice toasty warm. The coolant temperature is sort of almost halfway, sort of normal. So that's all pretty good. I just need to top up. So let's switch this off and top up that low coolant level. Oh, the lights are on. There we go. Okay. Right, let's do that now. And then I'll restart it and hopefully that'll be okay. I'll just keep filming. Let's have a quick look. Now, I've got to be a bit careful because it's all up to temperature now, so be careful opening the radiator cap, or as I call it, the coolant tank cap. Okay, well, the good news is there's no clouds of steam, there's no spraying, hissing coolant. Everything is all nice and dry in there. That's all good. Now, coolant tank. Oh God. Let's I'll just open this very carefully. Okay, that tank is actually pretty much empty. Right. Goodness. Well, there's obviously a lot of air that had to come out. Yeah, that's nearly empty. Right. Let's get the coolant and top that up. Now, don't want to overfill it, so I'm just going to try and put some in and then have a look at the side of the bottle. It might need several top-ups. I know when I had my timing belt done years ago and the water pump was changed at the same time, I got a low coolant warning and I had to top up several times. Right, that's coming up towards max. Okay, there we go, that's back to max now. Right, that's back to the line. Let's just put that back on. Properly. What I want to do really is go for a longer drive, get this, once all the air's out, got to get this really up to proper temperature and pressure. So just to stress test all those joints, make sure that nothing's going to pop off or leak. Alright, let's just make sure that coolant warning is gone. Low washer fluid, that's okay, I know about that. Right, okay. Right. So what I should now feel, radiator hose is still cold. The hoses to and from the Webasto are warm, which is good. What I'll do a bit later is just get the torch and shine it down in there and just make sure that that elbow on the thermostat housing isn't leaking at all. Right. Okay, that's still at max, so that's looking good. Okay, so I've just got back from another drive, a bit faster and longer this time, and got a low coolant error again. So I went out round the block, came back, put about half a litre in, and then it's just taken another half a litre, so 3 litres in total now. There's only 2 litres left in this 5 litre bottle, so I will have to keep a close eye on that. I do believe that all the air is now out because everything's blowing nice warm air and things like that, so the coolant system has been sort of purged through. But I think what might have happened, yeah, it's the radiator hose is now hot. When I got back from the first drive, that was still cold, so I've gone out again, going a bit faster, and it started to then send coolant through the radiator and air has come out of that. So now that that is hot, the Webasto hoses are hot, the coolant's topped up again, I'm hoping that will be it now for coolant top-ups. I remember when I had the timing belt done, I had to top it up about 3 times, 2 or 3 times, as it does take a couple of attempts to get all the air out of the system. Right, well, a busy couple of days, but the Webasto heater is now plumbed in. The fuel line is ready for some diesel to go in that little tank. The only thing missing now is the control box, the electronics. Okay, so I will be coming on to that very soon. Now that this is plumbed in, I want to get it running. So that is it for part 7. In part 8, I will build the electronic control box and the display box module, which will have various LED displays and that on it of the temperature, and be able to actually see what's going on then using those temperature sensors that I put on the hoses. Right, that is it for part 7. Nearly there, nearly there. This has taken years and years and years, this project, and one more video and it will be running, and that will be it, and I can move on to something else. Right, okay, that's enough for today. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you, bye.